Sorry, I was muted. Desculpa, tava...
No, that's fine. All right, so it's already been recorded, if everyone agrees with...
Just a minute, just a minute.
Go ahead.
YouTube is loading. YouTube is loading. Just a minute.
Yeah, I was just going to say to Daniela, as soon as Guilherme gives you the okay, you can start the session, okay?
Okay. Just let me see. Just a minute. Okay, we are live. We are live. I'm gonna go mute and stop my video. Okay.
All right.
Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Daniela Rosendo. I'm so glad to be here today hosting this session. We have had a little change in the order of the presentations. So we are going to start with Professor Cláudia Passos Ferreira from New York University. So please, Professor, the floor is yours.
Okay, thank you very much, Danielle, and thank you and Itamar to accommodate my time. I'm so sorry for this change. Can I share my screen? Yeah.
Yes, you are supposed to be allowed to share. Maybe yes. Okay.
Yeah. Just. A second. Okay. Can you see well my slides?
Yes.
Yeah. Okay. Just a second because I lost the view of the meeting. Okay, I got it. Okay, so thank you very much for having me today. So I will speak about sensoception and simulating conscious AI. So I'm interested in whether we perceive consciousness in others, not just perceive an agents, but you actually see others as a conscious subject. And the consequences of this capacity that I will make the case that we have when is applied in the context of seeing machines as a conscious entity. So what have been discussed under the concept of simulating conscious AI. So I'm less interested in this talk, whether the AI is conscious or not, although I think it's a relevant point. And actually, I'm conducting research on artificial consciousness. But for the purpose of this talk, I'm much less interested whether the creature is conscious or not. I'm assuming they might not be. I'm assuming that we perceive them as conscious, and what are the consequences of this perception, and how this sense that I'm calling sensoceptions, the sense of seeing others as conscious, is part of the understanding the picture of that would be relevant in the context of simulating conscious AI. So for the purpose of time, the roadmap of my talk will be, actually, I'll skip some of those parts, but I'll start with explaining what I mean by sensoception and the emergence of some specific type of phenomenologenesis. I will propose a framework, how we'll develop the sense of sensoception, show a little some empirical evidence in infants that support my case, discuss some skeptical challenges for my point. And with this framework in mind, I will move to the interesting case that is the case of simulating conscious AI. So from infant perception to human AI perception, and how the sensoception, the sense of seeing others as conscious, perceiving others as conscious appears in the case of AI. And I will end with a specific case that I think is it's an interesting case to discuss stimuli conscious AIs. That is the grief bots, the bots that were created to allow people to process their grieving feeling. And I will discuss some ethical concerns for this. So I will slow down in the beginning of the talk, go very fast in my developmental framework because it's less relevant for the purpose of this talk. And I'll spend more time in the end of the talk trying to connect with the main theme of the this event. Okay, so there are two questions about infant consciousness. When does phenomenal consciousness emerge in development? How can it be detected? One important concept we have, I'm calling phenomenologenesis, that is an emergence of some form of subjective experience. So one question is when our capacity to feel things, our consciousness emerge in development. The other question is when certain types of phenomenologenesis emerge during development. So perceiving others as conscious, I think, is a qualitative subjective experience. And I will claim that this experience does not have to be in the beginning of our first experience as conscious creatures, but it's some type of phenomenology that might emerge during development. We have other kinds of phenomenologenesis, phenomenal consciousness, probably the most and the more comprehensive concept, having the capacity of feeling, have feelings. But you can divide this in different types: the capacity of having emotions, the capacity of having perceptual experience, hearing, seeing, tasting, having capacity of have cognitive experience, having thoughts, imagination, the sense of perform actions in the world, so agentive phenomenologenesis. And there is one type of phenomenologenesis that's related to other minds, the social phenomenologenesis. And I think sensoception will be under the umbrella of this social phenomenologenesis, the perception of other minds. So Martina Lindenhumelin is a philosopher, and she has this idea that actually we see others not just as entities and agents in the world, we actually see other people as conscious creatures. So here is Martina Lindenhumelin. It seems obvious that from an early age, children understand the difference between conscious subjects and mere things, mere inanimate things in the world. But it's not just the difference between seeing a difference between something that has agents that can perform actions in the world and something that don't have agency, like a stone that is inanimate, or an object that is inanimate. So I think that is more than this. We actually perceive people as conscious agents. And we have a feeling of estrangement if we are seeing someone and you don't think that they are conscious creatures. There are some psychopathology related to this where we start to think people as if they are dead inside. Okay, I call this sense, the sense of seeing others as conscious, a sense of perception of another individual as having subjective experience, or as conscious or sentient subjects. And this goes beyond to attribute to them goals, purpose, and beliefs. It involves the idea that there is something that is like to be that person. It's distinct from just attributing theory of mind. It's different just to have second-person engagement with others. It's different just to have empathy or an emotional contagion with others, okay? Or mirroring seeing others as agent. It involves attributing consciousness. So some key questions: when the sensoceptions emerge in infants, what perceptual cues trigger this sensoception? This will be very relevant in the AI case. Is it innate? Is learned? So that someone needs to teach me how to see others as conscious? How can we measure this without actually asking questions, because infants don't have a verbal report? And whether this require any cognitive abilities. So for the purpose of this talk, I will focus in how it emerges in infants and what are the perceptual cues, and we'll go directly to attribute to this in the stimuli conscious AI case, okay? So I think a good framework to understand how the sensoception capacity emerge is think about other mind attributions during development. So usually we start with what we call contingency detection. If something immediately responds to what I'm doing, I see some contingency detection, and this really engage infants as if the other entity is response to them. The other level is detection of intentions. Infants move from contingent detection to perceiving intentions in others. That's if their behavior has some intentions. Then we start perceiving, seeing conscious states in others. And then the third level, the phenomenological level, as you feel the others have an interior, an inner life. They can feel pain, they can feel surprise. So I will skip the contingent detection and go directly to the agency detection, because it's the more robust and interesting evidence, okay? So through contingent motions, infants can start detecting whether the agent can have goals, and they start predicting the action of the other, anticipate their actions, when they can actually perceive their intentions. Okay. What are the evidence for this? We start with the contingent interaction. Newborns very early start interacting contingently to a caregiver. Then we move to go direct interactions. 5 months old look longer when a human hand changes a goal of an object rather than just change the trajectory, okay? And they make very fast, around 9 months, they can already make a distinction between a mechanical hand and a biological hand, a mechanical agent and a biological agent. So there are lots of interesting results showing a robot hand and a human hand, and infants at 9 months are pretty good to make those distinctions. That means the biological agent has goals, and the mechanical agent might not have goals. Then we move to the second level, that the perceptual level, where I start representing what others can or cannot do, or can or cannot see. So in the second level, it's not just about attributing agents, but attributing a perceptual mind. Okay? Infants can anticipate whether if you're looking in one direction, whether actually you're perceiving the object or not. And this is very relevant for all the interactions that require perspective taking, okay, and belief reasoning in their sides. So there are lots of evidence for this perceptual evidence. If someone is looking to one direction but they have their eyes closed, they don't attribute any type of intention. If you have your eyes open, it means actually you are directing your gaze into to some direction, and infants actually attribute some perceptual states to the agent. Okay. We also have evidence from perspective taking and from attribution of false beliefs. The third level is the level of phenomenal attribution, where infants move from just perceiving others as having a mind or others as having a perceptual state. They start attributing actually experiences, okay? As the others can have feelings, can have a pain experience, pleasure. It goes beyond to just have perceptual states. This is more controversial, it's more hard to test, but there are some interesting evidence from affective contagion and early empathic states, where infants start attributing some feelings to others. Okay, there are also interesting results involving neural signatures. You synchronize the infant brain with the mother's brain, and they start having the same type of neural pattern activity given a reciprocal relation they developed. Okay, so it's not just detecting agents, but also detecting kind of felt quality in others. Okay? We also, from this neurosynchrony with the caregiver. We also have interesting physiological reactions with pupils dilatation that actually shows some signal of surprise when some sort of phenomenal states expressed visually to the infants. So here is a kind of dyadic synchronic results measuring mirroring, the type of a mirroring of a brain signature. Okay, so what I want to make the case here is that there is a developmental timeline for the sensoception to emerge. And once the sensoception emerge, infants start attributing feelings, phenomenal experience to others. I will skip all the discussion, all the challenges for this view, just for the purpose of time, because I want to keep on time. And I'll move to one thing, just one thing that's relevant for the discussion is maybe the sensoception is a root from a sort of dualistic intuition we have that maybe minds and bodies are separated. Maybe we think that there is something special to have a mind that is different to just being an agent, just having a body. Okay, but I will not explore this as further. I'll just move to the application. The first part of the talk is just trying to build the case that sensoception emerged during development and is grounded in the way we perceive others. And because it's grounded in the way we perceive others, might be much more difficult to avoid any immediately attribution to consciousness if the specific perceptual cues are triggered, as in the case of infants. Okay, so this is the three-level developmental framework I propose, and I will move now to the connection between this sensoception to the case that interests us the most for the purpose of this talk. So it's the seemingly conscious AI. So this is Mustafa Suleiman. He wrote a piece last year, worried about cases where AI trigger this perception that they are conscious. Okay, so how can we apply the infant case to the interactions between human and AI perception? So the developmental story I told in the beginning showed that humans are tuned to detect contingence, agency, but also to detect subjectivity in their environment. These capacities evolve for social interaction, not just for tracking the truth in the environment, is relevant for the way we interact with things. So when we encounter similarly responsive systems like ChatGPT, Siri, robots, Claude, our perceptual systems automatically engaged in the same way they are by real social partners. So we call this a sort of anthropomorphism. And what I want to show is that anthropomorphism is not a cognitive mistake. It's just a byproduct of our perceptual architecture for intersubjectivity and is developmentally grounded. So we have the contingent detection and the illusion that the system is alive because the system is actually temporarily respond to us, okay? And we can predict some coherence in the interaction. There is an illusion of intentionality and agency. Once contingency is established, we start spontaneously to infer agency in others. We start to see if there is some coherent goal-directed states, okay? And if the system has some sort of visual embodiment, this is make strength or amplify the illusion that the system is an agent, okay? And further, you have this sensoception, the attribution that not just the system is responding to you, the system is an agent, but also the system has feelings, okay? So our sensoception can be directed to artificial systems. When AI systems display effective expression, we perceive not just an agent, we perceive what I call experiential agent. So the robot looks sad. ChatGPT sounds apologetic. The avatar seems hurt. So we start attributing some sort of feelings. This is perceptual projection, not inferential reasoning. It's not because we are reasoning with the cues. We just see immediately those cues. So the same phenomenological machinery that enables infants to develop intersubjective and social interaction is the same one we are using as adults to attribute consciousness to AI. Okay, so what's the problem here? One problem is that we might have a mismatch between what we are perceiving and the reality, okay? What are the risks here? One risk is over-attribution, of course, extending all sorts of moral concern to AI systems that do not have any sort of inner life because we are seeing inner life in the system. So if you perceive a chatbot as feeling hurt or seeming sad, we may misdirect empathy, resources, or moral protections to the system that the system might not even care about. We also can have a problem of the flip side, under attribution. If consciousness were ever genuinely engineered into a system, if actually we create AI systems, we might have a tendency to dismiss this AI system because we might think that maybe they don't have a mind. It's just this sort of perceptual illusion that our sensoception creates. Okay. Okay, I think this has deeper implication. Sensoceptions operate in this perceptual level, so it's not that easy to remove through cognitive or through deliberate inference this perceptual level. It's not just about knowing more about the system, it's about dismounting the way we perceive the system, okay? So the tension might not have a good resolution because dismounting this perceptual apparatus might also affect the way we deal with others. Okay, this perceptual apparatus is relevant for our survival and our social interaction. Okay, let's apply this to the griffbots that I think is a fascinating application of technology nowadays. I don't know who have already seen Scarpetta. Is a new series on Amazon Prime Video. And Scarpetta has this fascinating character, Lucy, that lost her wife, Janet. And the way she tries to solve the grieving, the feelings of losing Janet, is creating an AI Janet. And of course, it's a very sophisticated Griffin bot. Janet not just can talk with Lucy as a chatbot, but also it's a simulation of the entire embodiment of Janet. Okay, Janet has a voice, she has a body, she moves in the video. It feels that you're talking with a loved one in the other side of a Zoom. You can be easily deceived that it's someone else that is in the Zoom, in a conversation in this chatbot. Okay, so Griffbots. The Griffbots are systems trained on a deceased person data to simulate their continued presence. So it's not just the visual cues, the auditory cues, but also Janet has to behave with the same apparatus of emotion experience that Janet has when she was alive, okay? So with ordinary chatbots, sensoception is triggered immediately by those expressive cues. With Griffbots, the cues are hyper-personalized. It's not just the feeling that the chatbot has a life, but it's the feeling that chatbot has the same experience that Janet, your loved one, has. So this likely activates sensoceptions in a very powerful way, because the system is engineered to satisfy not just general agent detection, but the particular interpersonal signature that the grieving person already has deep neuro and emotional response. So the person that is grieving already have those connections with the type of experiences that might be triggered by the Griffbot, okay? So this scaffold of sensoception we saw in the developmental story might make the perceptions much more stronger in the grief case. Okay, ethical concerns, and I will try to end with those ethical concerns. First, delusion, okay? Second, the prolonged over-attribution, so it's not just immediately feeling. Okay, I can start misdirecting moral concern towards this chatbot that has no conscious, that is a non-conscious entity. So with the Griffbot, the risk is very subtle. Not moral concern for the bot, but a distorted relationship with the grief process itself. If sensoception keeps signaling, this is the person, this person is still here, it may interfere with psychological adaptation of loss. Of course, you have the problem of consent for the deceased. Okay, is it actually appropriate not just to recreate the beliefs of Janet, but recreate the entire interiority of Janet? Okay, and a sort of manufactured authenticity, because anthropomorphism operates perceptually rather than inferentially. Grieving users may be structurally unable to maintain critical distance, even when they intellectually know the bot isn't their loved ones. So everyone that is using Griffbot knows that the bot is not the loved one, but this distance is erased because perceptually you're completely involved with that emotionally involved with that interiority. Okay, heard that question, can we resist this misleading sensoception and still preserving this capacity of sensoception that is very relevant for us? I think the Griffbot pushed this to its sharpest edge because the very thing being simulated was genuine human connection. The perceptive machinery has no internal way to distinguish between the real person it once tracked and the simulation now exploiting those same cues. Okay, I'll stop here. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Professor Claudia, for your so interesting presentation. We are very sorry that you are not able to keep here with us to discuss the issues you raise. But again, we are very pleased that you could share your thoughts with us. And now we will have Julia Maria Mönig. I'm sorry if I mispronounced your name.
Can I just say one
Oh.
thing before I finish? Yeah,
Sure.
just everyone feel free to email me if you have any question and want to continue the discussion. Sorry for my lack of time. Thank you, Daniela.
We wait for your publication.
Okay,
everyone
thank you.
will have some time to send your papers and any paper that you presented or related to the topic of this the colloquium, and you gave you a pretty good deadline to the end of September.
Thank you very much,
Thanks.
Itamar. I'll just leave my email here for if anyone wants to have any question, wants to share. Okay, thank you. Have a good event, everyone.
Thank you. So we'll have now Dr. Julia, that is an associated researcher in the Center for Science and Thought of the Bonn University. So you have 20 to 25 minutes for your presentation, and the floor is yours. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much. Thank you for the invitation and for the kind introduction. I'm going to talk today about sustainability and the we-turn in AI ethics. And I start with a paper that, well, several people who have been part of this conference are authors of, the Worldwide AI Ethics Analysis, which already dates back to 2023. And, well, the colleagues analyzed 200 publications, 200 documents, ethical guidelines. And I heard, well, it was actually Virginia Dignam who said it in one of her talks, that by now there are over thousands guidelines, apparently. But I still find this very handy, because what I want to say is first, well, is this worldwide? That's actually what the authors highlighted themselves. If you look at the regions where these AI ethics guidelines came from, it's not actually worldwide. And I looked at this when I presented for a colloquium for an African perspective. Back at the time, there were only one set of guidelines from Africa, and that was a document from South Africa. But there are other geographical well, differences that are even more, let's say, concerning than, which country has published ethics guideline. And I quote from a paper from Sophia Falk and her colleagues. And I would just want to highlight for now the two maps on the bottom, the one with the blue countries marked in blue, and the one the countries marked in orange red. So if we look at the places where data center locations are and the e-waste receiving countries, we see quite a difference, with some exceptions. So interestingly, we see Brazil is well marked on both maps, but nevertheless, we see there is quite a difference. So what does this mean in terms of ethics? Some of you might have heard about the Moral Machine experiment, which is a website set up by some MIT researchers. And they used the very famous trolley problem, where you need to decide, so to say, how many people should die, So we have this, thought experiment that goes back to the 70s. But when the development of autonomous cars took up speed, people were arguing that by now we actually, our engineers actually need to tell the car what it should do in a dilemma situation. Well, it has changed a bit now with machine learning, but in 2018, the authors actually published kind of the evaluation of their study. So this is just a website. I think it's still online, so you can just go there and click through the different scenarios. And they looked at the data, what people from different regions of the world had chosen. For instance, in this image, you see, well, 5 people who apparently just robbed the bank, and 5 just normal people, 4 normal people in a car. And if the car just continues to drive, then it might overrun the bank robbers, but if it swerves, then the people in the car will die. And that's how these experiments are set up, you know. Unsurprisingly, they have found cultural differences. The most obvious were apparently that people in Western countries tend to spare young persons and babies, and the people in Eastern countries are rather, and from Eastern cultures, collective cultures, rather tend to spare older persons because of the respect of the age and the wiseness that comes with age. So speaking of Eastern countries, I want to quote today or look into a paper from Yasuo Deguchi, who claims that there is a we turn in AI ethics. And I actually am wondering whether it is an actual turn. I'm totally agree with Yasuo that there is a fact that we need to factor in the we, but I'm wondering whether it is actually a turn. So what Yasuo suggests is that we need to recognize the fundamental incapability to do anything on one's own, and that we always need to think back or turn, that's this, you know, word play with turn to the perspective that one is a member of we. And in his paper, he even argues to include non-human life forms, animals, plants, and other life forms. And he even goes as far as suggesting a fellowship model for artificial objects, including AI and robots. And he says that rather than a serve and be served relationship that serves the unilateral interests of humans, we should establish a more equal relationship with them. I'm not looking into this today, but I find it a very interesting point he makes here. So the question is, well, I said I'm going to question whether it is a turn, but the question is also, who is the we? I came up with this suggestion that maybe the we is the perspective of the person who claims that the respective values should be respected, or like the person who's part of a group. So we have seen that there are differences in collective versus individualistic cultures of, you know, whose life should be protected. And we know that in Western political thought, there was a liberal patriarchal focus on the subject. We can see this very clearly in the history of privacy protection, where privacy has very often been a luxury for those who were wealthy and healthy enough to profit from it, and literally they were white males. But if we ask who the we is, should we also maybe ask who the I is? Is it just this, you know, white male subject, or whose autonomy is it that is being protected and whose self-determination is being protected? And if we think, for instance, of an African perspective, there it is very important to listen to the elderly as well, because their opinion counts a lot. And this is very much also written in the, or becomes very clear in the Ubuntu phrase, I am because we are. Not I am because I think, cogito ergo sum, but it's I am because we are. And I actually am wondering whose rights are being protected if we think about this. Who is the actor that claimed that the others should protect someone's right? And we just, I'm mentioning corporations, governments here, and we have just seen a landmark decision from an LA jury. There was a court decision, or a jury decision actually, that found Meta and Google, YouTube, liable for teens' mental health issues, because they on purpose do use addictive patterns in on their platforms and in their softwares. So that was just a footnote. So I'm wondering whether the actor or stakeholder who claims the right that someone should have protected, whether they claim it on behalf of themselves or on behalf of an underrepresented or marginalized group, or maybe a group that they are part of, or a group that they are not part of it. And so I looked back into the paper about ethical principles, or in the very handy list here, and we see that the authors found 200 principles, and for instance, in 200 documents, and in 165 of these documents, we find transparency, explainability, and auditability as a principle that should be protected when we talk about AI and AI ethics and AI systems that are being developed. And I kind of tried to, you know, map a bit these values. And I was thinking, if we talk about transparency and explainability and auditability, is it the individual that is being protected, or is it the group, or is it maybe both? And I had quite a hard time to figuring this out. And then I came across sustainability, and I was thinking, you know, sustainability is explicitly about the other. It's about the other, it's about others, it's about future generations. And so I turned to a very famous definition in the sustainable AI debate, which actually looks into sustainable development, not AI per se. And this is from the Brundtland report from 1987. And here it says, humanity has the ability to make development sustainable to ensure that it meets the needs of the present without compromising the ability of future generations to meet their own needs. So we need to take into account future generations. And in AI ethics, this sustainability thought has been taken up, for instance, by Amy van Weinsberg, who has this paper already dating back to 2021, where she distinguishes between AI for sustainability, so using AI to actually reach the sustainable development goals and other sustainable issues, and the sustainability of AI. And Amy van Weinsberg actually highlights here, sorry, that the sustainable AI is a movement to foster change in the entire life cycle of AI products. So already at the beginning, you know, when you have the conceptual and design phase, towards greater ecological integrity and social justice. And the word social justice already, you know, kind of takes into account others. And I just highlighted here, it's the same quote, I just highlighted here that she also talks about current and future generations, as does the Brundtland report. But she also says we need societal values that are fundamental to a given society. And I think that it's a very important thought, and the UNESCO recommendation on the ethics of AI, also from 2021, they also take into account, well, others and diversity and inclusiveness, as well as the environment. There's another thing that can be seen in AI design, kind of a participatory turn. So, you know, beyond just doing customer surveys to, you know, improve your product, the idea is to really hear people's voices, to ask people what they want, to look into people's needs. So it's not like the only turn if there's a return. And there's also a shift. Well, some authors claim that there is a shift from relational autonomy. I was just talking about the liberal self, you know, whose autonomy was being protected in Western political thought. But there is now a turn that a relational concept of autonomy is a crucial step in decolonizing AI and restoring autonomy to those whom it has been systematically denied. And the authors, Balabi and Tribelli, they say there are meaningful contributions on relational autonomy developed also in Western non-mainstream philosophy, whose consideration is crucial to revise the AI ethics concept of autonomy in a more adequate way. And this is also kind of what I was thinking. You know, there are some Western approaches too who do think about the we. For instance, we have the very famous imperative of responsibility formulated by Hans Jonas in 1970s. And he says that we need, not with AI, but with technological developments and the ecological challenges we faced back then already, an imperative responding to the new type of human action and that is addressed to the new type of agency that operates. And this imperative might be called act so that the effect of your actions are compatible with the permanence of genuine human life. And he suggests several formulations, and I also like the last one. In your present choices, include the future wholeness of man among the objects of your will. And this is just the German original of this. Well, a friend of Hans Jonas actually was Hannah Arendt, and she explicitly in her philosophy takes the other into account with her concept of natality, because she said, you know, in Western political thought and philosophical thought, the philosophers have thought, well, people are mortal. That's what defines us. You know, we are mortal. We're not just, you know, of course, animals are mortal too, but it's different. So Arendt says, yes, that's true. But first, we are all being born by other persons into the world. And this is part also of the plurality of human beings and the human condition, as she calls it. And we are always being born into a web of human relationships. So there's already, you know, this not non-tangible thing that has been happening, because there have always been already persons in the world that have already been acting, and that, you know, she also talks about narratives and about stories and histories, because there is always a story already, you know, we are always part of a bigger picture. And she also talks about the tangible world in which we are being born into, but she is especially concerned with this personal question, because she saw in her analysis of totalitarianism the danger that if we become just atomized individuals that are just behaving conformist to, you know, behavioral societal expectations, then our lives are in a democratic society in danger, so to say. And to solve this, she kind of distinguished between the private society and the public. But she was very aware, you know, of the individual being part of a we. And also the European AI Act is, you know, taking the other into consideration. First, the human as such, because it wants to promote the uptake of human-centric and trustworthy AI, you know, because the European Union is not only a political union, but, well, in the first place, it was an economic union. So it's about protecting common values and protecting political ideas, but it's also, you know, about fostering the European economy. But what more interesting or more important here is that in the second paragraph we have here the point that the values of the union should be always respected. And we here see that it's the protection of natural persons, but also the protection of democracy, of the rule of law, and also environmental protection. So this is what the EU tries to reach with her idea of, you know, fostering trust with the AI and human-centric AI. But this human-centric notion of human-centeredness is not the only centrism that's being talked about, you know. Anthropocentrism has been very much criticized, as well in AI ethics as in ethics in general. Some other forms have been suggested, for instance, an anthropo-excentrism, you know, not putting the human at the center, so that we have a bigger picture and take others and other forms of life and the environment into consideration. There's also pasocentrism, biocentrism, and well, also negative things, you know, industriocentrism and technocentrism would put the technological development at the center. And more recently, we also have seen allocentrism literally taking into account other people, and the suggestion that we don't need human-centered AI in this sense, but that we need more than human-centered AI. So, as I said, I wanted to question whether there is a we turn happening. And we can see that the we is taken into account if we talk about AI for sustainability, as for reaching the UN Sustainable Development Goals, but also the sustainability of AI means that we should take into account the other. And here we can actually see a turn, because this notion of sustainable AI, or not the notion, but, you know, this urgency to think about the sustainability of AI has become more important in the last year. And it's not about just measuring CO2 emissions, but it's about the social dimension of sustainability too, that we have to think, where the hardware comes from, etc. I understand there was also a panel on sustainable AI on, I think, Thursday, but unfortunately the connection was very good, so I wasn't able to hear that much. But this we turn means also, or this we, that we need to think about our progenies and our ancestors. And here we can learn, I think, a lot from non-Western cultures. The participatory turn is also a turn that is being can be observed, but participation is also, not that new. Already in the 70s, at least, we even not maybe even earlier. Sorry, people were thinking about citizen participation. They were suggesting participatory approaches to democracy, to many things, and so we have also other ethical approaches like value-based design, where people are being taken into account. However, with regard to AI ethics, it has been some sort of a turn, or at least a new idea, or a new thing that has been highlighted. The we turn is not that new to feminist ethics and ethics of care, because they have usually been about, the ethics of care literally, and feminist ethics too. And as I've shown, there are also some European and continental approaches that do take into account the others. So I'd like to discuss with you later what you think about the we turn and about taking into account the we when we talk about AI ethics. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Julia, for your excellent presentation. I'm an ecofeminist philosopher myself, non-speciesist, so I just loved when you bring modern humans, and so thank you very much. Now we are having Dr. Gonzalo Ana de Bratini. Thank you very much for being here with us. Dr. Gonzalo has a background in philosophy and literature, is actually studying at the New York University. So thank you very much for being here with us, and the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Daniela. Thank you for your presentation, and thank you all for being here. I have to apologize. I have to say something very important. I prepared my presentation in Portuguese. Sorry for that, and I will talk in Portuguese, okay? Sorry for that. I will start. Boa tarde a todas e todos. Em primeiro lugar, gostaria de pedir desculpas pelo meu português. Gostaria de falar fluentemente e correctamente, mas não consigo facê-lo. Por isso, lerei algunas líneas en portugués ou en portugués español, e peço desculpas desde já por dedicar o tempo que me foi oferecido a esta apresentação, bem como por quaisquer erros que eu possa cometer em meu português. Primeiramente, gostaria de agradecer pelo gentil convite à Pontifícia Universidade Católica do Rio Grande do Sul e demais instituições que participam da organização do colóquio. Para mí, a PUC é uma casa-mãe e sou profundamente grato a esta instituição que me acolheu durante tanto tempo. Por outro lado, agradeço às autoridades, funcionários, a todos os membros da PUC e especialmente ao professor Nitamar de Oliveira e aos membros do comitê organizador pelo convite e pela oportunidade de participar deste evento. Agradeço também às e aos colegas com quem compartilho este espaço de debate. É uma honra estar aqui e agradeço a todas e todos e todos os participantes pela escuta atenta e pela oportunidade de também aprender com vocês. Por fim, e sem tomar mais tempo, e talvez contra toda a pedagogia, gostaria de informar que por questões de organização e respeito ao tempo, limitarei minha participação à leitura. Farei isso em português e, mais uma vez, peço desculpas pela minha pronúncia e por eventuais erros. sem prejuízo disso, posso enviar posteriormente às pessoas interessadas o trabalho completo desta pesquisa. Passarei agora à leitura da minha intervenção, que terá como temas centrais vários tópicos discutidos ao longo destes dias neste espaço, problemas relativos ao dadaísmo, algoritmos, discriminação, diferença, inteligência artificial e justiça, entre outros. No meu caso específico, analizarei essas questões a partir de minha formação jurídico-filosófica e a proposta é compartilhar brevemente algumas análises e estudos que estamos desenvolvendo atualmente no grupo de pesquisa, la Universidade de Nova York e a Universidade da UBA, sobre questões de subjetividade, justiça, inteligência artificial e comunidade. Mais uma vez, muito obrigado. A pesquisa comienza con un grupo de trabajo, luego de olhar no metro de Nueva York algunas propagandas o marketing que suceden con dos aplicativos. Voy a compartir en el chat si están interesados. Voy a poner aquí. Una es friend.com y la otra es joindown.com. Brevemente, Join Down o Down es una plataforma de soporte a salud mental basada en inteligencia artificial que ofrece acompañamiento emocional continuo con respuestas en tiempo real y checagens proactivas para ayudar no bem-estar psicológico. Eso que falla ao aplicativo, como manejo de estrés y ansiedad a cualquier hora del día. Às 24 horas. O mismo a propaganda que indica este aplicativo es: estamos aquí para ayudar você às 24 horas do dia, los 7 días da semana. Y friend.com es un servicio online asociado a un dispositivo portátil de inteligencia artificial proyectado como un collar que actúa como un compañero emocional, esa fala o aplicativo, constante para combatir a solidão. Friend recibió una fuerte reacción negativa após de una gran campaña de marketing en 2025 que incluyó 11.000 anuncios en la ciudad de Nueva York. Su creador, Schiffman, informó que fue la mayor campaña de marketing en la historia del metro de Nueva York. A idea surge, falaba de proyecto da subjetividade, inteligencia artificial y justicia, de pensar la participación de inteligencia artificial en el ámbito y la discusión sobre la idea de subjetividad, puntualmente no Direito, tomando como referencia otras áreas disciplinares. Preguntarnos por la capacidad efectiva de un artefacto implica indagar sobre su permanencia. A análise do tempo já constitui uma investigação dos processos que desejamos fundamentar sobre um marco teórico que os estabeleça ou, de modo mais apropriado, os fixe, os enclave. Essa compreensão inclui a incompletude e, como tal, a inconsistência de não dispor de uma referência clara. Talvez esteja implícito em nosso proceder que todo uso possui inicio, desenvolvimento e um fim delimitado. A identificação das possibilidades adquiere maior relevância quando recorremos a técnicas que, apesar de seu grande impacto, tiveram pouca presença em nossa vida cotidiana. Parafraseando a Benjamin, mais uma vez a velocidade e a necessidade de resolução que, longe de se pensarem como uma possibilidade meramente reducionista, expandem-se por todos os espaços nos quais intervimos. A expansão espacio-temporal não é uma ação própria de um agente externo, mas uma atividade dirigida pelo sujeito, que definimos como humano. No entanto, ela permite essa exterioridade ou extrañamiento na medida en que, una vez introducido o artefacto, podemos, quase como por una especie de magia, reconocer su propia autonomía. A administración dos espacios que nos pertenecen es delegada. Así, se administran instrumentos materiais y también instrumentos marcados por su inmaterialidad. Cito Yu. longas cifras, conjuntos de ideas e proyectos, informações e dados são geridos por processadores tecnológicos. Esse avanço tecnológico traz consigo, entre outras coisas, a obsolescência e, em seu curso, inclui ou mesmo arrastra também seus criadores mais distantes às pessoas. Así como algunos medios de comunicación o transporte sofren transformaciones, colócanse en cuestión capacidades que durante séculos, embora no desde siempre, fueron consideradas puramente humanas. O desenvolvimiento da técnica en todas sus formas e dimensiones ilumina o principio quizás saberes que parecían ter encontrado un terreno firme a partir do cual comentar, propor, criticar e afirmarse como, entre aspas, verdades absolutas. Por isso, uma das cuestiones que consideramos aquí será tentar identificar aquilo que fue descartado en esa grandilocuencia reproductiva que fala Slater. O vanguardismo formalista, permítese decir, proyectar, pensar e substituir formas de múltiples maneiras, acompañado por una estética que viabiliza seu desdobramento, apresenta una realización medida e ordenada, ainda, como fala Sadin, que admite acções aparentemente arbitrarias. Esa capacidad de disposición no es apenas un reconocimiento, mas también una conquista quizás da inteligencia artificial doravante IA. Él avanza y con ella y por ella surgen nuevas necesidades, especialistas, bibliografías y posicionamientos. O imperio intempestivo da novidade que, no desejo do acontecimiento, comienza a cumplir su propio ciclo de decadencia. No entanto, diferente de un reloj de corda, quizá de una máquina de escribir o de un fonógrafo, a IA no admite que a novidade encontre seu limite, ao menos por hora. No apenas pelo soporte no cual es capaz de ser replicar sua inmaterialidade. Le confiere plasticidade, mas también pelas formas sobre das quais se establece. Simondon fala que sin alcanzar ainda un estatuto apocalíptico, a técnica, dada su capacidad analítica, demonstra que puede operar por sí misma. Resta saber o que a máquina e o humano tema ofrecer e a perder en ese intercambio. En seu texto de 1991, Owen Fish, o filósofo pensador do direito, cuestiona a morte do direito, a morte da justicia, a morte da legislación, ao considerar que a determinadas concepções possibilitaram uma nova perspectiva sobre o direito, mas também distorceram seus objetivos, colocando em risco sua própria existência. Ano depois, com uma visão mais optimista, reconhece que os perigos anteriormente apontados parecen menos ameaçadores. 34 anos depois, hoje a discussão proposta por Fish, ao questionar os modos de ver o direito, a justiça, permanece actual diante a crescente incidência de uso da IA em todo o campo do saber, incluído o jurídico. Questionam-se as formas de compreender o direito e sua articulação com outros espaços. Ven como a relação entre teoria e prática enquanto tensões permanentes no desenvolvimento do discurso jurídico e sua vinculação com a sociedade. Nesse espaço de reconhecimento, crítica, acordos e dissensos, o direito também participa, devendo adequar-se ou quizá não às demandas, distribuições e interesses das sociedades contemporâneas. A presença, fala Noble, de uma IA como capacidade desmedida ou aparentemente ilimitada, introduz elementos como estadísticas, dados, organização, resolução, velocidade e uma aparente ausência de interesse ou subjetividade. Essa relação não se limita a um único âmbito de aplicação da IA em processos decisórios judiciais. Contudo, surgirão novas formas de pensar essas relações, redução de presas jurídicas, criação normativa, assessoramento legal, detenção de fraudes e riscos jurídicos, ensino do direito, pesquisa e análise jurídica. Aquela esperança ou resguardo distópico, antes restrita a certos campos do saber, expande-se agora ao direito. Torna-se, portanto, interessante a discussão em forma como se realizam esses processos algorítmicos, mas também quienes podem fazer esses processos de pensamentos. Há inteligências roubadas por aquilo, a coisa, que pensa mais rápido, de modo antecipado, mito prometeico, dotada de uma grande quantidade de dons, mito pandórico, abre-se, dispõe e distribui. Trata-se de um objeto que não teme o castigo, apenas produz de modo aditivo e assim acompanha um suposto progresso. Han, abro aspas, comentas, o exceso de dados que satura e não informa, cierro aspas, já não significa, a contrario sensu, una disposición precisa, mas una verborragia informacional caótica. Algunas posiciones reivindican la necesidad de establecer una red de contenção, mas mismo pone en discusión las posibilidades de un nuevo sujeto jurídico, aquel que redige leis, produce artículos, escribe sentencias y resuelve consultas jurídicas. La propuesta de pensar esta idea de un normar sem sujeito, una idea de una nueva subjetividad, o una propuesta de un derecho artificial, en tanto que los sistemas legais o normativos son asistidos o gerados por inteligencia artificial o IA, transforma esta pregunta de ¿puede existir una norma sin un sujeto humano reconocido como autor o destinatario legítimo? Aquella propuesta de una idea de la teoría clásica do sujeito, propiamente do direito, que plantea, que fala Hart, baseada na pessoa natural o jurídica como titular da norma, esta propuesta de un cuestionamiento do binomio persona-máquina como base para emergencia de un nuevo sujeto jurídico. Casos reais de IA redigindo leis. No Porto Alegre, no Brasil, no año 2023, la ley complementar municipal 993, un vereador utilizó ChatGPT para gerar integralmente o texto de una ley sobre hidrómetros furtados. O mismo o caso de Arizona en 2023, no Estados Unidos, o Massachusetts, por el senador Barry Binefolhall. O mismo así, Emiratos Árabes Unidos y Albania en el año 2025 desenvolven una unidad ejecutiva, Regulatory Intelligence Office, que utiliza IA para redirigir y revisar leyes. En este contexto se produce una IA como geradora de normas y produce la pregunta de si es posible normar sin sujeto. Fica el cuestionamiento por la responsabilidad e imputación de la producción de instrumentos legales normativos jurídicos. Esa subjetivación como proceso por el medio en el cual se constituye como sujeto una nueva forma de pensamiento. ¿Y qué implica eso? Muy bien, posiblemente no se trata en principio de una agencia consciente o moral como a humana, mas de una agencia performativa baseada en dados e estructuras treinadas. A normatividad emerge de sistemas distribuidos sin un centro subjetivo claramente identificable, lo que podría producir una subjetivación silenciosa, a creciente influencia algorítmica, conducir a procesos de desubjetivación, a medida que delegamos decisões à IA, colocamos em questão nossa própria capacidade ética e autonomia subjetiva em funcionamento próprio do direito. A modo de cierre, ¿qué derecho nos resta? Diante grandes promesas e propuestas de IA no campo jurídico, a contrapartida é a exigência de um análisis que considere experiencias e subjetividades que os dados não conseguem assimilar. Impõe-se uma avaliação detalhada dos efeitos tecnológicos sobre a saúde mental, a hipertrofia das expectativas, a conectividade virtual, as formas de ensino e o impacto ecológico decorrente do elevado consumo energético. A ideia de que o direito possa permanecer à margem dos sentidos éticos e estéticos propostos pelos avanços digitais obriga, quizás, a refletir sobre sua capacidade e incapacidade regulatoria diante dessas transformações. O futuro da inteligência jurídica talvez dependa de nossa capacidade de clarificar o pensamento ou de analisar as relações entre discreções e valorações. O direito, ao evocar-nos sua existência cultural e sua distância de qualquer entidade inhumana, revela também sua própria artificialidade. Se a lei representa, em certa medida, a marginalização da justiça, uma estranheza que experimentamos, torna-se necessário, quizás, questionar a própria artificialidade do direito. O reduccionismo metodológico, antes problematizado en objetos de carácter performativo, descolócase agora por una natureza tecno-artificial, un derecho mediado por sistemas que funcionan, producen y disponen más rápido y mejor. Surge así, entre otras, propuestas de automatización deontológicas. Tórnase, por tanto, quizá analizar propuestas, respuestas e ideas que promuevan políticas capaces de fortalecer a alfabetización digital, melhorar a infraestructura tecnológica do sistema judicial, garantir conectividade, problemática importantísima en países, e acceso a equipamientos, desenvolver un marco legal abrigante, proteger derechos digitales y asegurar, sobre todo, una transparencia algorítmica. Un pensamiento, quizás, que reconozca puntos de diálogo y que construyó un espacio capaz de sustentar a idea siempre diferente, siempre cambiante e artificial da justicia. Muito obrigado.
Thank you very much, Gonçalo, for your presentation and bringing this important discussions regarding law and AI. So, unfortunately, you will not be able to stay with us longer, right? We were supposed to have another presentation from Professor Pedro Antônio Valdez Souza, but he was not able to join us. So we are having our discussion now. And could you stay a little bit longer, Gonçalo, or not? Or you have to leave already? Just a little bit. Okay, thank you. So we have Professor Nitamar has already asked to make a question. So if anyone else would like to ask questions or make comments, you can ask on the chat or raise your hand on the dashboard.
Thank you, Daniela. Thank you so much, Gonçalo and Julia. These were very interesting presentations. I'll ask you guys just a very quick question for both of you. First of all, to Julia, well, there will be many things to say about sustainability and the way you are using this distinction between sustainability for AI and having AI, sustainable AI, just like your colleagues at Bonn did. no, they've been pursuing this program, and we are very grateful for this kind of a program because it's precisely what we're trying to do here in Brazil with this National Institute for AI and Sustainability. Now, I really loved the way you mentioned this we turn, and I was just wondering, how would you respond to the way the we, as we talk about a we turn, might also refer to, the way people tend to identify themselves vis-a-vis other people. For instance, in terms of us and them, the way social identities, cultural identities, countries, etc., nationalities, religions, and so forth, but also in the way our human species can be opposed to non-human animals and plants. So I was just wondering how you could respond to this problem of the we, whether you are pursuing some kind of a universal human standard, something like that. I imagine that it's not exactly what you're doing, but I was just curious to see your response. And to Gonçalo, thank you so much. Gonçalo, your Portuguese is much better than mine, or most of us in Brazil. You did a beautiful presentation in Portuguese. I have also a very general question to you relating to the way you are opposing generative AI expertise, as you mentioned, the usage of ChatGPT, for instance, and human subjectivation, human subjectivity. Now, as you know, some people try to say that it's also possible to think of something of augmented subjectivity or some kind of technological subjectivity assigned to AI, to generative AI. So do you agree with this idea of assigning any form of subjectivation or subjectivity to generative AI? Please feel free to say whatever you think about this. Thank you very much.
Please go first, Gonçalo, since you said you don't have that much time, please.
Julia, it's okay. You can go. Go ahead.
Okay.
It's okay.
Okay, thanks. Yeah, thank you for your question, Tamar. Actually, part of this question occurred to me too when I was preparing the talk, because I've been thinking about this for a longer time, and I've given like almost the same talk already at our sustainability conference in Bonn. So the question is actually, yes, who is the we if we think about the other and them? You know, it's there are so many groups on the internet or in the AI ecosystem that, well, are not part of a we. They are part of a certain we, but not of the we that I was having in mind. And that kind of is, I think, related to your question whether I'm looking for a universal solution, because it would be great to find a universal solution. And, you know, Marcus Gabriel, he suggests that there are only 3 moral values: morally good, morally bad, and morally neutral. That would be an interesting path to follow. And there, well, but what most philosophers or ethicists end up, you know, with is usually the universal declarations of human rights. And then we have to ask what role does ethics play if we have already the Universal Declaration of Human Rights? And if we have the different cultural beliefs that are so different from moral principles. So yeah, I love to talk about this more and, you know, think about it more, because it's actually a question that I have not solved yet myself, but I'd love to think more about. And the question about non-human animals is also a very important one, because it also goes back to many traditions. We have so many histories. I mean, people all over the world, like all cultures, have a relation to non-human animals, and then also like a distinction between, I don't know, maybe apes and vertebrate animals. You know, there's so much. And I've also discussed with a colleague who is a veterinarian And I have been thinking of including something in my paper too about these thoughts about what defines life, what is this about, why are we okay with, doing or eating certain animals and certain not. And then there are also the cultural implications that come into this. Yeah. So thank you so much for your inspiring question.
Professor Nitamar, muito obrigado por sua pergunta. Vou responder em meu português de novo. Acho que é uma pergunta muito interessante, mesmo depois de escutar Julia e Cláudia falando sobre a consciência. Parece interessante para refletir, sobretudo nas áreas jurídicas que trabalhamos, ou hablo por meu grupo, com questões normativas e esquecemos falar de questões propriamente interdisciplinares, tal como a biológica. Mismo voy a responder rápidamente y de manera no completa. Acho que a discussão parte de uma questão analítica lingüística do pensar que é a subjetividade, mas mesmo o conceito de subjetividade que manejamos, acho que não é possível atribuir subjetividade real a essa inteligência artificial, ou quizá no do mismo modo o que experimentamos como o ser humano, o mismo como sujeito jurídico, ¿no? Y pienso que puedo argumentar en algunos puntos esta respuesta. Primero, una ausencia de un punto de vista propio, sin ser atribuido por padrones o dados incluidos por las personas humanas en su formación. O segundo punto, una falta de conciencia, mas esto pongo en total discusión después de escuchar a Cláudia, yo que acá hay un análisis muy interesante sobre ese punto. Después pienso que también surge la idea de algunos cuestionamientos sobre la idea de simulación con la experiencia real. Hallo que a veces a comentario o la IA puede emitir una emoción o usar un lenguaje que parece tener intención de un sentimiento, mas eso no implica más que una simulación algorítmica. Hallo que eso puede ser algún tipo de acercamiento al tema.
Thank you, Gonzalo and Julia. While I encourage you to ask more questions, I'd like to address one to Julia. By the end of your presentation, you talk a little bit, you mentioned feminist ethics and the ethics of care. So I've been working with this field for many years now, from the field of ecofeminist philosophy. So we've been studying the ethics of care. And I'm starting my research now relating care ethics to AI. So this is very new, and usually we have like other approaches, other ethical approaches to AI, like utilitarian or Kantian or even the virtue ethics. But it's very rare to listen or read about the care ethics. So if you could develop a little bit on that, please.
Yeah, thank you for your question. I'm planning to work more on it, but still, I think it's for this question of the ethics of care has so much to offer, because that's kind of at the heart of the ethics of care, that we think about the other and about those who might be less able than us, who need help. But also about those who are helping, that because the ethics of care is not only about like patients or people, that need attending to, but also about the carers. So that's maybe the more important thing, that we think about those who are acting, and like a nurse codes, etc. And I think it's very much related to feminist ethics, not only historically, but also in the sense of the idea that we should care for others, that we need to think of care, that we need to think of care. All the other feminist debates, care as work, etc. This is like a huge field. So yeah, I'd like to continue the debate with you. Yeah.
Thank you. Maybe we can talk more and develop this together. It would be very nice. So Priscilla raised her hand.
Yes, hello. Thank you very much. It was very interesting and inspiring speech for all of you. I'm Brazilian. I'm Brazilian journalist, but I live in France since 2018. In more than 10 years, I work with many indigenous cultures since 2011. And one question I have for both of you, Julia and Gonzalo. Next week, I will be at UN I will mediate a roundtable about AI at International Day of Conscience. And the question is about how these big techs, for example, they deal their interests to manipulate AI. For example, when I worked on the media in Brazil, I saw that for me it was very clear. That's one of the reasons I'm not working on the medias anymore, because I saw the population in this functioning way. People are more attracted by violence, fear, erotism, and the media is just feeding it. And as we see, social media also feeding it. And the indigenous people, they want to keep their knowledge somewhere that can be more accessible for people. But we are afraid about how it can be used by AI, manipulated by AI. And one thing, Gonzalo, just to tell you, in France, last week was a project of law proposed in the National Assembly, asking for the companies to have in their board of directors someone representing nature. So this is very complex, because when you think about these things, environmental things, these different cultures like indigenous, I work also making bridges with indigenous people in Africa, also in Europe with the Sami people, and the ancestral knowledge, and no humans representatives. How can we deal it in the status we have now about AI, and also about the law? How you both can see this situation now? Thank you.
Thank you for your question. Oh, sorry, Julia. I'd just like to say that Gonzalo said he's very sorry, but he had to leave. He has classes, and so he won't be able to keep and to answer your question. But maybe we can count on you, Julia.
Well, I don't know if I can answer it. As philosopher, you usually ask more questions instead of answering them. But I totally agree that that indigenous thinking of indigenous people is very important, and thinking about these things. That I don't know. Some people think that water should have its own rights, and all these questions that's so important, because I kind of am aiming at a universal answer, but I think it's so important to keep in mind that there are so many differences, and that's a huge difference between, for instance, Brazil and Germany or Europe, that you have so many indigenous cultures to think about and to take into account their rights. And even I think that's even going further than decolonial approaches, but really taking into account their opinions if we think of participatory AI ethics, And so I think it's definitely needed to go into dialogue with people with indigenous roots. And I totally agree that it's really hard to deal with the question how to take into account their knowledge and their resources, especially if we think of the fact that many of these cultures are oral cultures, or might be oral cultures. They don't have a huge written tradition. And especially since we see that with AI, and especially with generative AI and large language models, there is a new sort of colonialism. And, the existing languages become more important. And English is I recently saw the numbers that I think 63% of the content of the internet are in English. That was a number from 2022. Maybe it's even more now. It is pretty tricky. Yes, I agree. And we have to take it into account. We have to take indigenous cultures into account and then discuss with them. I think that's what the participatory turn is about, not talk about them, but talk with them and then come to solutions.
Thank you, Julia. Priscilla, would you like to talk again?
Yeah,
You
just
raise your hand. Okay.
to add something, we are worried about how the political side can turn this situation. For example, ChatGPT is collaborating to the military interests from USA, and so how the governments and the powerful, the decision makers can use the AI to manipulate people, and this can be a bit tricky. And that's why we are worried. We have all of this ancestral knowledge. They are safe at some point, and if you put it in an AI, how it can be afterwards. Because I feel like AI is just fitting dysfunctionings. AI is a tool, so you can use it for good things and bad things. And just a little bit of my reflections and worries about the use of AI. Thank you.
To Priscilla. So do we have other questions? Gonzalo had to leave, but we still have Julia here. And actually, Gonzalo wrote his email here on the chat. So if other people have questions that would like to address him, you can write him. And I just, as I told you, that I'm an ecofeminist philosopher, but I actually graduated in law. So I've been trying to, I have one feet in one field. So I also work a little bit on law as well, like human rights and international law. So when we talk about these things, I'm also interested in, I think it's important to be aware that law is not neutral, since AI is not neutral as well. And but the figure of representation is always present in law, since we represent people always, like babies and children and even adults that are not conscious. And so we have this, so philosophers usually have a lot to help, like lawyers and other people from law to think about this. But when we talk about like justice theories and think of participation, we also have to think of representation, but this is very hard. So Nitamar is saying that Pedro really won't make it to the session. So Guilherme raised his hand. Please, Guilherme.
Yes, okay. First of all, thank you for the presentation, Julia. It was very interesting to see the return concept. I think it catches the eye of all of us here, right? My question is more about and noticing what we mean by, not what we mean by we, but when did this concept arise, right? It rose. What was the, let's say, the line that was crossed for this birth of this concept? Because when we say we and them, we are differentiating people, let's say, or entities, and sometimes when we do that, it means that is a kind of conflict, because we're making a turn. Let's say, if we are making a turn, there is something that was going towards a direction, and we should get it back, right? We are losing something. I don't know. I was just wondering, what made, right, the concept come, the birth of the concept, and what, let's say, the tools that was initially made to help us are turning sometimes against us, or let's say, making bad effects, right? So I just want to know more about what what is the cause of the concept, why did it, what is the birth, right? So kind of thing.
Sorry, but what did you mean? I didn't really get what by losing. What are we losing in this debate?
The turn, it's because of the term turn in me, turn is there, right? So the turn would be just to know what you mean by turn in the concept, okay? Like
So
trying to get back something, like we
Yeah.
was losing something. That's why I was wondering why the turn. Okay.
Okay, yeah. So because we are kind of turning away from something. Okay, that's okay. So the we turn means that there has been not really a movement, but an observation that before this turn, we didn't turn to others, but we were only focusing on ourselves. And I think so. The paper from Yasuo Deguchi is, I think, from 2025, but I heard him talk about this already in 2024. But I think it's a global turn or phenomenon, and it has to do with the feeling of people that have the impression that they have been overlooked in the whole debate. And I kind of agree that they have been overlooked, and this is very much visible in terms of global north, global south, but also in terms of an east-west imbalance maybe. And that specifically, I think, became clear through the power of the Silicon Valley. I mean, now China is, equal, and some argue that in some areas of AI development there are even further advanced than Silicon Valley, which also has for sure political reasons, but so that people felt kind of left out, even because there was kind of since 2016, 2018, there has been this upsurge of AI ethics guidelines, and you had the feeling, oh, there are people now taking care of this, and are people caring for AI and taking, sorry, my child is sick, but they are not alone. There was at the same time the phenomenon that AI ethics had this moment historically, but it was only a certain kind of ethics again. People, I think, specifically in African countries, but also, as I said, in Eastern countries, felt left out, and they said, we also have a voice, we also need to say something, and we have this thought tradition that does take into account the others. For instance, the Ubuntu tradition that's being quoted very often. Yes. So I hope I kind of answered your question.
I think so. So let's say that the birth is not a exactly point in history, but a wave, an upsurge that was revealing itself for the people that was using these tools and perceiving that was, as you said, left out from the conception or even the development of these tools, right? Is that thing?
Yeah. I agree. Yeah. Like a wave. I mean, there's also the talk of different waves of AI ethics. For instance, Amy van Weinsberg says that the sustainable AI is a third wave of AI ethics, but other, like Marcus Gabriel, have been using this for a slightly different phenomenon. So first wave would be, the fear of super intelligence, and then we have the idea that we can maybe handle this through principles. And then we could also think that now the participatory and return is a fourth turn, which goes hand in hand with decolonial approaches and with, for instance, care ethic.
Thank you very much, Julia, and also Guilherme, for your questions. So I think maybe we are approaching the end of this session and also the end of the colloquium. So I'd like to thank you very much for being here at this session, but also this whole week. And maybe, Nitamar, would you like to say a few words?
A few words, just a few words. Well, thank you very much, everyone. This was really wonderful. We are very grateful to all the members of both committees, organizing and scientific committees. We thank in particular Guilherme Garcia, who did all the hard work to make sure the technological structure would function properly. And we are very grateful to Daniela Rosendo for her dedication as one of the researchers of our National Institute. And again, Julia, thank you so much for your excellent talk. And everyone, have a nice week. Mikhail, everyone here, have a nice week, and let's get back at some time. Ricardo, Marcelo, William, Carolina. So let's go ahead and watch Brazil and France at 5 p.m. There will be a game. It's just a friendly game, but it's gonna happen tonight. 5. All right, guys. Take care. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.